What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi Fruit Loop. How are you? What you know?
I'm good. I'm good.
Well, this is the point where we talk about our sponsor, and I got my surprise package yesterday.
Dude, the quality in their work is crazy good.
It's so beautiful. So if you're on YouTube and you look behind me, you can see the quilt that Andrea at Two Cool T-shirt Quilts surprised me with yesterday. I have a video on our social media up close. I mean, it's art. It is
It's
artwork.
I'm blown away by it. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
tell
Clint,
you what I didn't know,
what?
that they can take, like, for memorial blankets, they can take clothing and make a quilt,
So not just T-shirts.
not just t-shirts.
Oh, that's really cool. I would love to do that with my Pops golf shirts.
Oh yeah.
Because the reason this is so special to me, and you know this, Fruit Loop, but every Saturday, my pop and I got together and watched Clemson football until he
Yep.
died. He died the day before we won the national championship back
Mhm.
in 2000. It was the 2017.
16, I think, right?
Well, it was the 16 season, but the game
Yeah.
was because
In
he died
17.
January like 8th.
Mhm.
So Clemson has a huge place in my heart because my grandpa raised me on it. And so I just thought of him when I got this yesterday. It was really special. So I think the golf shirts are a good idea. So you guys go to twocooltshirtquilts.com/pretty lies and alibis. And you can see in here and in the video I put online, we really highlight the different colors. I mean, the
Oh yeah.
colors. Lord have y'all, I'm sick. My brain ain't working. The different sizes. You see these
Sizes.
little
Yeah.
patches here. These are t-shirts. And
Yeah.
we've had a lot of people reach out to us in the last few days.
Yeah.
So hopefully Andrea will get some orders and we'll have some happy listeners.
Well, you think about it, when somebody passes away, you have all those shirts and you don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I
it'd be
sleep in a
cool.
lot of his shirts, like his
Mhm.
his Clemson t-shirts. And then this necklace here, I don't think I've ever said this is his fingerprint.
Yep.
My papa and I were very close. He was my buddy.
Yep.
So, anyways, so I have an infection around the lining of my lungs, and this is why my back is hurting, y'all.
There you go. You
So
got it's
I went
called
to the
pleural or something, right?
Plural C, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm on a slew of medications, and hopefully I'll feel better. I could be worse, but it's not fun breathing in.
No, I've heard that's very painful.
It's very painful. Hopefully you never have to find out. So big news.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
So, Gilbert PD have forwarded charges to Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Chad and Lori both got attempted first-degree murder charges in the attempt on Brandon. Finally.
Yeah, but it says as of this supplement, charges are not being submitted against Melanie Pulowski.
I
A
don't
little
know.
shocked by that,
I was shocked.
but okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Not that I believe this, but this is always an option. Is it possible? I think probably they just couldn't get enough digital evidence to implicate her. Maybe she's a little younger than Lori and Chad. She knows not to be super stupid with text messages. Maybe that's why. And then I thought, what if maybe she really didn't know they were going to murder Brandon or try to? But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
But,
I think, yeah.
if they don't have enough evidence to charge her, then maybe she's given them information that helped get these charges. Who knows? The
Here's my
investigation
question with
is
that.
still open, though. Yeah,
My whole question was that she's the only one that knew where he lived.
exactly.
So why
And
do you give Alex his address?
right. I'm not saying I buy she didn't know. I'm
Yeah.
just playing devil's advocate, trying to figure out why we didn't get charges. Y'all, I need to get my hair cut and colored. I'm shining in the front.
See, it's blessings of being a redhead. You
And
don't have
you,
to mess
you
with
and
it.
your mom
Yeah.
does. I have more gray than your mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's
that's
crazy.
redheads. We just, like, because my hair used to be darker than this,
It
but
did.
it
Yeah.
just gets gradually lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. Ginger.
Yeah.
So where we left off, and we're going to do another episode later, but we wanted to kind of keep digging into this Zulema thing. It's going to be really short. I have to go pick my kid up. But the last thing we talked about was Zulema said she remembers them saying that Tammy had become a zombie. And she
Yep.
doesn't remember who said what, but Alex was always like, I was told, or Lori would say, I was told. We talked about this, how Lori always said she was told
Yep.
from Chad.
Yep.
So that's where we left off. So when Tammy didn't die on the trip to go see her parents, Chad and Lori said she actually did pass away, but was taken over by an evil spirit and had become a zombie. Zulema said in the back of her mind, she thought they were saying the same things about Charles, and he ended up being shot. She said she thought, you guys aren't going to do something to people who are turning into zombies, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, you pick up here because I actually read your part. My bad.
So the investigator asked, sorry, um, what was Alex's response to her question about Tammy and if he had anything to do with it. And she said he sat back, pressed his back against the headboard of the bed, and said no, and said nothing else after that.
One thing to note that we didn't talk about just now with these charges, they did say if Alex were alive, he would have gotten the same charges. Just wanted to throw that in.
Yep. So she said she was waiting for him to say something else, and she asked if he was going to say anything else, and he said no. She said he seemed so sure with his answer. She said she pressed for more. She stood up and started to walk away, and Alex said, I think I'm being their fall guy. And Zulema said, the fall guy for what? And he wouldn't say anything else. She started to get frustrated and goes to walk away again. And he says to her, either I'm a man of God or I am not. She asked, what does that mean? And he said she was frustrated and mad because he wasn't saying anything else. She said they were probably telling him through blessings to do certain things. And maybe in his mind, he was thinking either I'm following what God is telling me to do or I'm not.
Yeah. And I thought that was a kind of an interesting exchange because you don't know at what point, if ever, these people had a little momentary, just a little clarity.
Yeah.
Where is he starting to put two and two together that, he didn't kill Tammy. We know that. We know he was in on the attempt when she was shot in her driveway.
Or attempted, not shot, but shot at.
Shot at, yeah.
Yes.
Thankfully, I mean, with this new stuff we've got about Brandon, you really realize how lucky that dude was. I mean, he could have been murdered and left those 4 kids in her hands, and goodness knows where this story would be if that had happened.
This is what I was thinking about that whole situation. So Brandon has seen everything transpire with Charles. He knows that he was called a zombie. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't 1 or 2 of her kids labeled a zombie?
Yeah, I think
Remember?
yeah, a couple of them were turning dark, and it
Exactly.
just seems to me like Chad didn't want, or what, for whatever reason, these kids were gonna mess up their mission.
Yeah. So in Brandon's defense, he's their caretaker. She's up and left.
Mhm.
He's their sole caretaker right now. So in his defense, I would be hiding too.
Yeah, and I think at this point, he really knows with what he witnessed in the last days of his marriage to Melanie that this stuff was off the rails. At this point, Charles is murdered.
Yep.
So, I don't think at this point, let's see, that was November. The kids were dead at that point, but nobody knew.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, he's just incredibly lucky. So
Yeah.
the investigator asked Zulema after he said that about being their fall guy, do you think that Chad and Lori had done something to Tammy? And she said she didn't know what to think at the time. It was really confusing because she said, in her words, she saw Chad and Lori as spiritual, kind, loving, charming, law abiding, God fearing people.
Woo.
Yeah, she had high thoughts of them.
I mean,
She
I
said none
wouldn't
of
check the
this.
box on any of that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I will say with the new stuff that came out last night related to Brandon's stuff, Zulema is not as clueless as she would have investigators to believe when she's
Yeah.
sitting down.
Yeah.
There were some things that made my jaw hit the floor, and we're going to start getting into that late tonight.
Yeah.
She said none of this stuff came together for her until she has a few months to process and put things together. She said until they found JJ and Tally's bodies, she thought they really had them hidden somewhere and that they were alive. So the investigator said that's what they had hoped, obviously, and Zulema said she really believed that they had them hiding somewhere and they were okay. But he asks on these conference calls that were going on with Chad, Lori, Melanie Pulowski, Ian, and her, did they talk about a code word to make sure it's safe to talk? And she remembers the day that her and Alex were going to Vegas and she got back from the spa. Alex wasn't in the house. So she calls and asks where he is. And he said he was in the walkway in the green field behind the house with Melanie Gibb. She says Melly, I'm sorry, Melanie Pulowski. And they call her Melly. So you'll hear a couple of times in there. I kept thinking something was wrong with the audio. It's Melly. That's her nickname. He told Zulema to come meet them so when they got to where they were, they could make these code words to say when it was not safe to talk and when it was safe. And we talked about this before. The code word was not happy Bob if it was safe to talk and pretty bird if it wasn't. So okay.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
It's like a club when you were a kid.
Yeah, like an after school treehouse club.
It's like the Little Rascals, the He-Man Woman Haters Club. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that movie. It's so cute.
It is.
He says they would call her with Ian's phone, and then he asks whose phone number she would call to conference with everyone. And Zulema makes a comment that they all had so many different numbers. And the investigator said that's why they're trying to figure out whose phone she called to conference, because they would call Zulema, and she was the one that actually got everybody on the line and set it up.
Ooh.
I thought Zulema was a little nervous to talk about this. I think just because it's one of those things where they know she did something, and I mean, when you admit to it, you in hindsight you look like an idiot because you
Well,
fell
yeah,
for
now
all this.
we know why she has immunity.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what they've released is nothing compared to what they haven't. So
Mhm.
she thinks it was Chad's phone, and a couple of times it was Lori's new phone. And she said she didn't think her phone records would go back that far. And her lawyer pipes in and says, "Yeah, they do."
The investigator says the conference calls were a couple of times to chat and a couple of times to worry. And Zulema said yes, a lot of times they didn't answer. She said they would ghost them. They would call one number, no answer, call the other, and maybe they would answer or call back. This is when they were in Hawaii. She thought they were in Utah because there was a conversation where they were laughing because Lori had gotten stuck in her car in a storm and couldn't move, and she had to spend the night in her car until she could get through the storm. Zulema thought it was a snowstorm and assumed Utah. Her lawyer says maybe they said that to put you off, and Zulema said it's possible. Ain't no way. I mean, I understand snow. Snow's bad. But
Yeah.
then some people do get stuck in their car. She ain't sleeping in her car.
No, I think at that point she was actually in Arizona.
Either there or Hawaii. It ain't snowing in Hawaii.
No,
She crazy.
unless Zulema called up a snowstorm for
Could
Hawaii,
have
then it would have.
been. Could have been. Or she could have portaled somewhere.
Yeah,
We got to talk about the portal at least once.
I know, right?
Sometimes Lori would say, for your protection, we're not telling you where we're at.
You know, she really tries to place them in such a level of high importance that to even think that her safety could be compromised
Yeah,
by knowing where they are. Her safety was compromised because she was married to Alex. Okay,
exactly.
let's just call a spade a spade.
Exactly. So he asked why she was always the one to set up the conference calls and not Ian or Melanie Pulowski or anyone else. And she pauses for a minute and says she doesn't know. There was no particular reason. She wasn't designated. The investigator asked if everyone in the group knew Chad and Lori's number, and she said at that time, no, they didn't, because she remembers one of the conversations they put Melly, which remembers Melanie Pulowski, on the phone, and she was crying because they weren't answering calls because one of the numbers wasn't working, and she hadn't talked to them since they had left Rexburg. Think about it. Like you draw all these, well, not all these people, but you draw these people in, and then you just cut off communication.
Right.
Like that's tough.
Yeah, and then you know, you're somebody like Melanie Pulowski and you've left behind your husband, your 4 adorable kids, and now you're left with some dude you barely know in
Yeah,
a strange town. I'd be crying too.
yeah. Yep. She said part of the manipulation and indoctrination in getting you to be a part of this is needing them and being close to them was their constant offering, like they offered a blessing of comfort or offering a blessing of promising you something. It was almost as if you get that on a constant basis and then it stops. You feel like you have no guidance.
Right. Exactly.
The investigator asked when Melanie Pulowski was in tears if Ian, Melanie, or Alex asked her for Lori and Chad's numbers, and she said they had their numbers too. She says she thinks it was given to Melanie during one of the conference calls. She didn't realize her setting up the conference calls was a pattern until the investigator brought it up.
Yeah, and she said one of the things they told her from the beginning was that putting her in a position of being so special, and Lori and Chad would often tell her that her mission was the most important one, and they had to take care of her more than anybody else. So it's just kind of that love bombing, which is such a classic example of how you draw people in.
Yeah.
I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but if I'm
Yep.
going to join a cult, I'm going to choose to join a cult. But you see how you're getting led to it by
Yep.
feeling super important. And if you look at this is like a band of misfits, all of them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take much to convince them they need this group, I think. I think that's how it starts with a lot of vulnerable people.
Yep.
But she asks, or the investigator asked if Chad and Lori were directing her to marry Alex. And she said they were suggesting it and said that they should definitely be together. So Chad gave her a blessing saying she would marry again. And Zulema said, I don't know about that, but she has a feeling they were saying the same thing to Alex. I would assume they probably were more on Alex about kind of winning Zulema over
Yeah.
because he was around Lori a lot more. And I mean, she could tell him it's raining men outside and he would believe her. He was just,
Oh yeah.
he believed everything they said. I'm gonna be singing that song all day long now. So the investigator asked if they told her part of her mission was to marry Alex. And she said the way they presented that was in order to finish their missions, you always needed someone that was going to be equal in their spirituality and equal to them to help complete the mission. So they would say Alex would be part of that for you and help with your mission, and he will be the supporter you need.
That's
So
that. That's that
that's a bit, yeah.
too.
So
We
Zulema,
called that from the get go.
oh yeah, we all said like
Mhm.
literally as soon as all this came out about everybody getting married, we were like, it's part of the, you have to be married to be in this group or something.
Everybody was getting divorced and everybody was getting married.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it was almost now that you look back and you read over this stuff, it's very predictable
Yep.
in a way. But
Yep.
Zulema wasn't sure if she believed she had to marry Alex to complete her mission, but she took their word for what they were saying. And they would ask her to do something and she would say a prayer. And then Chad and Lori would say, Zulema, this is what you did. So she would say, oh, I'm sending a hurricane. And then they would say, good job, you sent a hurricane.
Oh my
She
goodness.
said, she said she would wonder if she was really doing any of this. And she said a lot of things in her mind were saying she didn't know about all this stuff. And she said she would tell Chad and Lori sometimes, I'm putting that on a shelf until I can understand it.
Okay. A simple Google search would have said, "Oh, Zulema, you did not cause an earthquake."
Right, right. Well, I remember when I was on Law and Crime and I did that little live with them, Kathy, she said exactly what I thought at the time. If you remember, right when they all went in is when COVID hit. I think Idaho had some earthquakes that happened out of the blue, and
Uh,
Kathy was like, "Please don't let them be in this jail cell thinking they have power."
yeah.
Of course, that power's gone when you can't portal out of the pokey. She said she kept praying about Alex, and he was there from the beginning saying he wasn't messing around. He wants to get married. And he was insistent. And she told him to hold his horses. She didn't have an answer yet. She said, I had my doubts. Let me put it that way. And she said, once they got to know each other better and she spent time with him, she really did start to like him. And she said what she liked most about Alex was that she could have deep conversations with him about scripture and that he knew scripture very well. Sometimes they would be on the phone for hours discussing scripture. And she said she's never been able to be around somebody that could do that, especially somebody who was interested in her.
When Zulema went to Rexburg, October 7th, Alex was ready to get married, and he had called another county where you could go and get married quickly, kind of like Vegas. She said she told him she wasn't 100% sure, so she needed to wait. and he said they could wait as long as they needed to. She said he wasn't pressuring her. When he was coming back to Arizona from Rexburg for Thanksgiving, the day before he arrived, she was praying and asking. She said she got this feeling, okay, I think it's time for me to marry him. The investigator from Fremont asked if she thought Alex was pressuring her because Chad and Lori wanted him to get married to her, and she said it's possible. This is so crazy.
It is so crazy.
When asked if she thought Alex really loved her or if it was more because Chad and Lori told him to, she said, I don't know if someone can fake it that well. If she didn't love someone, I don't know if I could be doting over someone. If he could fake it, he's a really good faker.
Well, they faked everything.
Well, he was a murderer.
Right, exactly. They
You know,
faked this all religious stuff. They faked reasoning for murder. It's just, yeah.
yeah.
So, do you think we should stop here?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I need to go pick my kid up. I don't want to leave her standing there thinking I forgot her. She will. She'll call me. Where are you at?
Yeah, she'll be walking home.
Right. So we are going to either put one out later tonight or tomorrow. We're not sure yet. Just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. And yeah, but this is all interesting stuff. We have so much content for this case now between the last document dump, the new stuff that's come out, still catching up with these police videos. So we're just really getting started with these documents. But
Yep.
even though it's kind of a tedious, slow process, it's giving such a bigger picture than we've ever had of this case. So it's worth it. And going back and repeating things we've said and bringing it into context with new stuff, you really start to see this bigger picture. I can imagine this is what it must have felt like in a way for investigators once they started getting all this stuff back. A lot of questions are just starting to be answered. So we're on it.
Yep.
And we're going to keep going with it. Just a lot of stuff coming up too. We got Duggar. We got Chad's hearings on December the 2nd. So lots going on. We're just getting warmed up, y'all. Have a
Yep.
good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.